Please welcome Iowa's 4th District Congressman, Steve King.
Well, I appreciate the chance to be here, and I appreciate you coming here. You care about this great country, and I care about this great country. Of all that's been said, and there's much that you know, I'm speaking to a room full of experts. I reflect back at the Farm Progress Show in Boone here a few months ago, and I had a conversation with an EPA director there, and he said, don't worry about the RFS because, you know, we passed all of your comments on to the White House, and they have really smart people there that will evaluate your comments, and they will come with a good final decision on the RFS. What do you all think of that? What I said, really smart people in the White House? The really smart people are here in this room, and they were there at the Farm Progress Show. And so if you want to get a good decision, why don't you ask some of these people around here that cannot track your logic to get back to where you were, to ratchet down that RFS from what should have been 14.4 billion gallons down to 13.01 on ethanol. And so that gives you an idea of decisions made in government. But, you know, as I listen to the discussion that we have here today and look at your faces, I look back on a time, and I actually had a memo on the date. August 29th, 2012, I had the privilege of being a guest in the feedlots of Bill Cowser over at Nevada, and a lot of you know Bill. I think he's here today. And he had hosted congressional staff members coming out. Many of them were people from urban districts. And as he spoke to them, he said this, and I wrote it down. He said, of a lot of the rest of the country, he said, they really don't know who we are, where we come from, or why we do things. Now think of that. We have a way of life here. And a lot of the rest of the country doesn't know who we are, where we come from, or why we do things. And so I thought, well, I'd like to take an opportunity to say a little bit about that question that he raised when he made that statement that day. And it works out something like this. This ag land around this city that we're in, much of it was settled someplace right after the Civil War up until about 1880. I had a state senate district with 5 counties in it and 50 towns, and 10% of those towns celebrated their centennial in 1999 because they were trying to get in, I think, before the turn of the century. But that tells you how young we are. We haven't been here that long. This is a very freshly settled landscape that we have. And our ancestors came here across the prairie on a covered wagon, often with an ox and maybe a dog and a few tools, to live free or die out here on the prairie. That's who we are descended from. And I borrowed that motto from New Hampshire for a reason, because they're number 2 in the nation and as far as making a recommendation on who should be the next president of the United States. And, you know, they already had their motto, and ours is, our liberties we prize, and our rights we will maintain. It's a little bit softer than live free or die, but it means the same thing. So we're descended from those people that came out here to live free or die on the prairie in a covered wagon, the pioneers, and it builds something in the character when you're rooted in the land. And today, I can tell you with confidence, all new wealth comes from the land. Now, you might be able to seine some fish out of the ocean. That's a little bit of an exception. Now you could raise a little algae there and squeeze it into biodiesel. That's maybe a little exception too. But wherever you might want to go, especially in a small town, anywhere in America, stop in to see the butcher, the baker, no longer the candlestick maker, but sometimes for knickknacks and things, that's true. Stop in and see them. I can trace that money that goes over that counter right back to this soil. It is the core of who we are. All new wealth comes from the land. It comes out of the fields, it comes out of the mines, or you may actually, in those exceptions, seine it out of the ocean. That builds something in a people. It builds something in the character of a people that live in that fashion. I remember taking out the tree. It was an old cottonwood tree that the first, I'll say a Swedish family up around my neighborhood, the first immigrant from Sweden who lived under that tree the first winter. It's been years ago that tree came out, and it was a big tree when it came out. That tells you something about people whose roots go here. Well, what's happened? They built a sod house, and then they transitioned from horses, from work horses to tractors, and Now we're at this place where, let's see, no, I should stop a little bit in the 70s. The federal government said, go out there and plant fence row to fence row because we want all of this product and we're going to trade. And we're going to accelerate our trade with foreign countries, particularly the Soviet Union at the time. Some of you remember that. And so we went fence row to fence row. And then Jimmy Carter embargoed the grain to the Russians and to the Soviets. And our economy collapsed here. It collapsed for a decade. And when you see a downward spiral and you see your land prices go to less than half of what they were, your equipment prices go to less than half of what they were, you can't get out of that downward spiral. We didn't have capital, so what did we do? We sat around the kitchen tables and said, what do we do well? Well, we raise corn and soybeans well. We've got rich land. We know how to do these things. How do we add value? Governor Branstad came along on the scene about that, and he said, value-added agriculture. And I said, let's add value to the corn stalk and the bean stem, as close to the stalk and the stem as we can, as many times as we can, and we'll get our prosperity back. So we generated a renewable fuels industry as one of the components of this revival that was built on a basis of despair as I watched family farm after family farm be sold out, and the families got moved off the farm and moved to town somewhere. And I'm probably the guy in Congress who has burned and buried more family farms than anybody in the United States Congress, because that was my business at the time. And sometimes, many times, it broke your heart to see a family watch that go up in flames and then drive off of the place, and they'd come back to see what it looked like. Corn, soybeans, no longer a family farm. Well, what's been built here? And I watched my neighbors raise their children to get a good education, take your degree, and don't look back. Now they're buying plane tickets to visit their grandchildren. We're not. Our children and our grandchildren live within 10 miles of our house. We go to church together, and the kids spill out on the deck after church. It is the best life I could ask for, but a lot of it has to do because agriculture has adapted to the times, and the creativity of you have laid the foundation for renewable fuels, for extra marketing, for trade, and we need free trade, and we need smart trade, and we need access to other markets, and those are the things that we're promoting. But the renewable fuels industry was built here. And we would be locked out of this market if we didn't, by the petroleum industry, if we did not have the RFS, the Renewable Fuel Standard. It is the Holy Grail. And I will defend it. And to give you an example, when the blender's credit for ethanol came up to expire, there were about 9 months left. And the industry came to Congress and said, we'll give back all of it. We'll give back the last half of a year. That's $3.2 billion. We'd ask you to do this. Take half of it and reduce the deficit spending in your federal government, and take the other half and give us market access through blenders, pumps, and through flex fuel vehicles. That was the ask. And what happened? We didn't get that done. And why? Because the petroleum industry turned up their dream team of lobby and resisted us giving back, I say us, Midwest, Corn Belt, giving back $1.6 billion into the Treasury, and also they didn't want market access. That goes on in industry after industry. If you don't have market access, it doesn't matter how cheap you can produce ethanol or renewable fuels. Without market access, you've got no place to sell it. And they told us, the industry said, the petroleum industry said, we only want to end the blender's credit. We don't care about the RFS. That was a commitment back in 2011, December 31st, 2011. Well, it's a different story today, isn't it? They want to shut down all we're doing here to keep the competition out. And I want to do all things we can from all sources. By the way, I'm for drilling too. I'm for all sources of energy. I'm for growing the size of the energy pie. But I want to grow the profitability that comes out of agriculture because it's our life. It's our lives. And if we should lose the foundation for the family farm, we've then lost the foundation for the core of the heart and soul of America. We are the heart of the heartland. And it runs from Canada all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, and it's broad at least to the Rockies and to the other side of it, and it goes east pretty far too. But they know, and the East Coast and the West Coast, if we lose our foundation here, if we lose the foundation of our families, of our workforce, of our faith, if all of that is eroded by eroding the economy in the heart of the heartland, then America itself is lost. So we're about, First in the Nation Caucus, we are about having the first recommendation that goes on to New Hampshire and then South Carolina. And let's get this right. If we get this right, we can see Iowa values arrive in the Oval Office in the White House less than 2 years from now. I look forward to that day. I look forward to our values arriving there. And I look forward to the prosperity that is created by the technology and the development that we've demonstrated here. And so, as I said there at the Farm Progress Show in Boone that day, I'll say here, you know, the smart people are here. So if you want to know what to do, ask them. And you've built it, you've developed it, and the knowledge base is here. Let's develop the renewable fuels and all of the products that come from agriculture. But while we're doing that, let's own the knowledge foundation, and we can market that as well to the rest of the world. And the most important thing is to make the recommendation to the rest of the country on who will be the next president of the United States, who should be. And if we get that right, then America is on an ascending destiny rather than a descending destiny. That's how important this is. Thanks for being here and being part of this, and let's be engaged in this all the way up to the Iowa caucus and beyond. Thank you very much. Bless you all.